We get to do more calculus today. What? Woo woo! And you're actually not learning anything new, but you are practicing what you did yesterday. So let's do this thing. We're going to do daily lessons 75, 76, so nothing crazy today, but we're going to use the product rule from yesterday. So the very first thing that I want you to do is think about what is the product rule. If you need to go back a page in your notes, do that now. Okay, the product rule would be if I have two functions, the first times the second, take the derivative. I would say first times the derivative of the second plus second times the derivative of the first. Let's do this. So up here, I've got two graphs, f of x and g of x, and they are labeled, but just make sure you know f of x is over here, g of x is over here. And it says let p of x equal f of x times g of x. That looks like a product to me. Yay! And r of x equal x squared times g of x. That looks like another product. Woo! Woo woo! That was me being very excited. That's also what I do on roller coasters. When I'm very excited about it, I go woo woo, woo woo, just because I'm not very good at like being in a roller coaster scream. So let's do this. In the first one, it says if g prime of -4 equals 2. That's interesting. What is the value of p prime of -4? So let's stick with this first. P prime of -4 means that I have to take this p of x, and p of x is f of x times g of x. If I want to find p prime, that means I should probably take the derivative. So if f of x is my first function and g of x is my second function, I'm going to say first times the derivative of the second, which is just g prime, plus the second times the derivative of the first, which is just f prime. Okay, and then I've got p prime of -4. So anywhere I see an x, I'm going to substitute in -4. P prime of -4 equals f of -4. So I'm going to go up to my graph and I'm going to be really careful that I'm going to the right graph, but f of -4 would be right here at -1. G prime of -4. Hey, look at that. That was given to me. G prime of -4 is 2. If I went over to the graph of g and I thought, well, what is the slope of the tangent at -4? 1, 2, 3, 4. You can see that here the slope of the tangent is positive, but I wouldn't exactly be able to know what it was, so you'd never just have to guess that. So this is where the 2 is coming from. So first derivative of the second plus the second, so now I need g of -4, so I'm going to g of -4, and I can see this will be right up here at 6. F prime of -4. This one's not given, so I need to think about this a little bit. F prime of -4. I can see over here that I have a straight line. And so then I have to think, what is F prime? F prime is a derivative at -4, x equals -4. And the derivative is also known as the slope of the tangent line. If I count out the slope here, I can go down one, right one, or up one, left one. My slope is going to be -1. Okay, -2 minus 6. P prime of -4 is -8. We did it! Okay, let's do another one. And I'm actually going to go down because this one says find the equation of the tangent, of the line tangent to the graph. I need two things. What are they? A slope and a point. And this says to the graph of p of x, so be really careful. What that means then is that we need to find what the point is for p of x, so p of -4 and p prime of -4. This will be the point, this would be my slope. Well, once I find this. So p of -4, p of x was f of x times g of x. So it was given us up here. So I'm going to say f of -4 times g of -4. F of -4 is -1. g of negative 4 was 6. So I get negative 6. P prime of negative 4, we just said up here was negative 8. And then I could say y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. My y1 will be this negative 6, so I'm going to say negative 6, or I can say y plus 6. My slope was negative 8. My x value was negative 4. Equation of my tangent line. We did it! Okay, let's do another one. So over here we've got r prime of negative 2 is 20. What is the value of g prime of negative 2? Interesting, but it's giving me r and it's asking about g. So I'm going to be looking up here this r of x. So r of x is equal to x squared times g of x. Now what I want you to do is take the derivative. So what is the derivative? I'm just going to find a piece of paper. What is the derivative of r of x? R prime is going to be the product rule, so I'm saying this is my first function, this is my second. So first times the derivative of the second plus the second times the derivative of the first. And now if I want to find g prime of negative 2, and I know r prime of negative 2, I'm going to substitute in r prime of negative 2. And then I'm substituting in negative 2 here, so negative 2 squared would be 4. G prime of negative 2 plus g of negative 2 times negative 2 times 2, which would be negative 4. Oh, sorry. I know r prime of negative 2 was 20. It was given to me. I'm almost in my head. There we go. 4. G prime of negative 2 is what I want to find, so I'm going to keep that here. G of negative 2. G of negative 2 is right here at negative 2. Oh wait, no it's not. Look carefully. G of negative 2 is at negative 3. These numbers are pretty hard to read. Sorry, who's your teacher? Negative 3. And then I times negative 4. So here I'm going to write this over here. I'll get 20 is equal to 4 g prime of negative 2 plus 12. Subtract 12 on both sides. I'll get 8 is equal to 4 g prime of negative 2. Divide by 4 on both sides. I get 2 is equal to g prime of negative 2. And that's what I want. Yeah! Then down here it says find the equation of the line tangent to the graph of r of x when x equals negative 2. Be really careful to make sure that you're doing r of x. And to do r of x, I need a slope and a point. My point is going to be whatever r of negative 2 is. My slope will be r prime of negative 2, which was actually given to us already up here as 20. So we don't have to do more work for that one. But be careful you don't just go up here and say, oh, I'm picking 2 because it's right here. No, make sure you're talking about the graph of r of x. R of negative 2. R was x squared times g of x. So negative 2 squared times g of negative 2, which would be 4 times g of negative 2. G of negative 2 was negative 3. So then you're going to write y minus y1. That would be minus a negative 12, so that's just plus 12. M is my slope of my tangent, or my derivative. X minus x1 would be minus negative 2, or I could say plus 2. Yeah! Take a moment, see if you're, as you're thinking about this, and think, do I know how to do this? Am I good? I'm looking at something real quick because I want to make sure that I can compare my work with mine in the past. And we got negative 8. This one I did a whole other thing for, but that's okay. I did it in y-intercept form. I am going to trust myself. We are good. Blood cholesterol. Actually, we're definitely good. I agree with past me. Okay, next page. So this is the same idea. We're just using a table this time. So if you are feeling good about this and you're like, I think I could do this on my own right now, you can. But some of these are going to be a little bit different. Like the first question actually isn't asking the same as some of the other questions. Does that help? Hey, that helps a little. I'm going to leave this light on. The first one says, estimate the value of f prime of 3.5. So remember that f prime is the slope of the tangent. So if I'm estimating this, so again, this is the slope of the tangent at x equals 3.5. If I'm estimating this, we estimate using the slope of the secant. Because if you can't just touch the graph in one location, touch it in two, that's the next best thing. You know, like if you can't come in first, come in secant place. Secant, because that's a secant. Okay, you got it. So f prime of 3.5 is still going to be a slope. Remember, this is the slope of the tangent of f of x. So this would be the slope of the secant of f of x. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find this difference quotient, but I'm going to use f of x. Don't use f prime. Don't say, you know what, I'm going to average these slopes together between 3 and 4. Don't do that. Not okay. Don't just say, I'm going to average these two. It doesn't work out. I'm going to say something close to it. And I see I've got the point. I've got an x value at 3 and 4. So I'm going to say, this is not a negative. That's just an extra line there. F of 4 minus f of 3 over 4 minus 3. Again, not a negative. I just messed up and made a mark on my paper. F of 4 is 1. So again, you're using the f value. The thing that's messed up most is people use f prime. So f of 4 is 1. F of 3 is negative 2. 4 minus 3 is 1. 1 plus 2 is 3 over 1. F prime of 3.5 is approximately 3. Okay, let's do another one. So this one, if q of x is equal to 2f of x minus 4g of x. Well, this is a product, but if I did first times the derivative of the second plus second derivative of the first, what's the derivative of 2? 0. So in this one, I sadly don't really need to use the product rule, because to find q prime of x, this would just be 2 f prime of x minus 4 g prime of x. And that's it. Because these things, it's not 2f of x times 4g of x. So you can just say, well, this is just kind of like a polynomial before. I just take the derivative here, I can carry coefficients along for the ride. If you would do the product rule, that would be okay as far as like with the 2 and the f of x and then did it again over here. Because again, anytime you take the derivative of just a value like 2 or 4, you're going to get 0. Okay, q of 4. So q prime of 4 would be 2 f prime of 4 minus 4 g prime of 4. And then it's just looking at the table. Q prime of 4 will be equal to 2 f prime of 4. So go over here. F prime of 4 is 2 minus 4 g prime of 4. G prime is over here. Of 4 is negative 3. Q prime of 4 is going to be equal to 4 plus 12. I get 16. Woo! And good news. See on this next one? It looks like I've got a product. Hooray! So there's a couple things that you can do with this one. You can say, I'm just going to take this negative 2 out in front and then multiply my answer in the end, like whatever I get, my derivative, multiply it all by 2. Or negative 2. Or what I do is I usually just keep this negative 2 along with f of x so that I don't mess up the distributing later. So if I want the value of p prime of 3, that means I need to take the derivative. P prime of x is equal to the first times the derivative of the second would just be g prime plus the second, so that's just g of x, times the derivative of the first would be negative 2 f prime of x. And then that's the hard part. After that, you just substitute in. So p prime of 3 is going to be negative 2 f of 3 g prime of 3 plus g of 3 negative 2 f prime of 3. So you can do this and skip and just make sure that you've got the same answer as me. Negative 2 f of 3 be negative 2. G prime of 3, I'm not moving the paper down, I'm just looking at the top on the graph on the right. So G prime of 3 is 2 plus G of 3 is negative 3. Negative 2 f prime of 3 is negative 4. That means p prime of 3, negative 2 times negative 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, plus this would be positive 6 times negative 4 would be negative 24. If I subtract this, I would get negative 16. Yay! Wait, you want to do another one? Sure. This one says find the equation of the line tangent. It's like coming back to an old friend. We get to find the equation of a tangent line, which means we need two things: a slope and a point. So this is v of x, and it looks like it's product, which means you get to do the product rule to find the derivative, or the slope of the tangent. I'm just going to find the point first. So v of negative 1 would equal negative 1 cubed, which is just negative 1, times f of negative 1. Negative 1 times f of negative 1. F of negative 1, so again, I'm just going up to the chart and looking. F of negative 1 is 2. So I get negative 2. And then if I want to find v prime of x, you try it. First, so x cubed times the derivative of the second, which would just be f prime, plus the second times the derivative of the first. If I find v prime of negative 1, I substitute in. Negative 1 cubed is still negative 1. F prime of negative 1 plus f of negative 1 times 3x squared. Negative 1 squared would be 1 times 3, 3. V prime of negative 1 would be negative 1. F prime of negative 1, so going up here is 1. I'm going to guess you're skipping through a lot of this part of the video, and that's fine. F of negative 1 is 2 times 3. I would get negative 1 plus 6, which is 5. Last thing you do is the equation of the tangent line. So y minus y1, that was my y1 was negative 2, so I'm going to say y plus 2 is equal to m, which was 5x minus x1, so minus negative 1, or I can say plus 1. And then we only have one more problem. Oh, this one looks fun. It says k prime of 3. K prime of 3. This is my first term. This is my second. It is a product. K prime of x is going to be, and we have to be careful with parentheses, but I'm going to say first. So I'm writing down exactly like it is. The whole first function. First times the derivative of the second. So I have another parentheses. The derivative of 3 is just 0, so I don't have to do anything with that. Minus g of x would be minus g prime of x. And that's it. So I've got this whole first function times negative g prime of x. So first times the derivative of the second, plus the second, I'm writing down the 3 minus g of x, times the derivative of the first. Again, the derivative of 3 is just 0. So the only thing I'm left with here is 2f prime of x. And the tricky part is substituting this in. So k prime of 3 would be 2 f of 3. So you try this. And if you want to skip right now, this is going to be crazy complicated to substitute in. Well, by crazy complicated, I just mean don't mess it up and you have to look back and forth. But you should get, if I skip to the very end, k prime of 3 is equal to negative 46. But to actually do this, f of 3, check your answers to make sure you got it. F of 3 is negative 2. g prime of 3, wait, g prime of 3 is negative 2. Then over here, you would have g of 3 is negative 3. F prime of 3, I'm looking, is negative 4. So you're substituting all these in. Be really careful with parentheses, but you should get negative 46 once you're all done. We did it. What's the product rule again? I'm so glad to teach you. Oh, I should say first, the product rule. First times the derivative of the second plus second derivative of the first. If you don't know that yet, make yourself some flashcards as we're going through these. So there's a couple things that you've learned so far. So power rule, if you're not comfortable with that yet, write it down. Say, write on a flashcard, like multiply the exponent times the coefficient, subtract the exponent, or subtract 1 from the exponent. For the product rule, right, first times the derivative of the second plus second derivative of the first until you know it, and then you can throw out the flashcards. Thanks so much. I love teaching you. I hope you have a great day. Bye.